and welcome back. Today some missile changes have occurred on the live server. Heat seekers across the board have been changed quite substantially, not in the performance but in their quality of life, as well as the Magic 2 530 Super from last patch and the PL5 from the patch before it will be included in this video, but considering I'm only European and not Canadian on top of it, I will try to keep this video relatively short and concise. So what is the main thing that has been changed, you might ask? Well, the missile now will be primed up in a second. You can hear it. Maybe I'll shut up for a second. I press the button and you instantly hear the whining, the growling of the sidewinder. Yes, that is a pun. Now the other thing is, a lot of the missiles used to be able to stay up in this prime state for 10-15 seconds and then it would turn off again and you have to redo it. Now it will stay up for 20 seconds. The R24 and the R23T both went down from 30 to 20 seconds, but everything else will now be, well, upped to 20 seconds, or they maintained 20 seconds, making it so that you need to plan a little bit less and you don't have to think about when you have to turn your missile on, and you don't have to worry about the missile turning itself off just as you are about to fire, which is extremely annoying. What is also pretty annoying, however, is being on the receiving end of this, because being able to turn them on in a second also means you can start doing cancel shit like this. It's very annoying, it's not very efficient, but hey, it's an option now, and if you really want to kill someone you can probably do that. Probably not the most efficient way to play the game, but the guy is probably going to die, unless of course he has flares and he flares twice and then he defeats all your missiles at once. It's a little bit of a trade-off. And then we are going to look at the F8E, mainly because I want to take a closer look at the AIM-9Ds, because they made the missile caged now. And a caged missile means exactly what you think it is. And if you don't know what it is, it means that your lock circle now turns into this absolutely abysmal range. It's if you zoom out, it's as big as your cursor, which is absolutely abysmal. And with missiles like the AIM-9Ds, it's actually kind of problematic, because at closer ranges they don't pull that hard. These missiles are made for longer to medium ranges, where dictating the flight path is pretty important. Of course, versus the MiG-15 going 600, it's not as much of a deal. But not being able to lock this missile in anything of a lead, if that guy's going very fast, he's closer and he's going sideways to me, I'm basically unable to kill him at all. And if you get in a very close range dogfight where slaving and just getting close to him and then like getting the lock in and then being able to shoot the missile a little bit to the side, predicting his flight path is pretty important. Now you can't really do that, and it's going to make this extremely frustrating to fly, being not able to lead the missile. I know you already couldn't slave him, but when you fly something like the F8E, it's going to be very problematic. When you fly the FGR and you aren't spaded yet, because I figured that most of the guys that fly the FGR nowadays are actually not stock, because they have been flying this thing for a while. That's the wrong variant. This is the one that actually has everything unlocked. So the AIM-9D here is going to be your main weapon for a very long part of this grind. Sure, the AIM-9Gs are better, but you need to get there first without spending GE. And if you spend GE, well, it doesn't really apply to you, because you aren't going to be using these anyway. But not being able to slave the AIM-9G is pretty damn annoying. And it's going to make a lot of planes, or well, these planes mainly, very frustrating to fly. And another thing that has been changed is the 530 Supers. These are the SRH missile on the F1C and the F1CT. Flight range has been increased from 18 to 40 km, max G load from 30 to 28. And the main thing that happened in the Danger Zone update, so a few weeks ago, is the fact that if these missiles lose lock for a split second, they don't instantly destroy themselves anymore, so they aren't as easy to defeat. So they are a little bit more reliable. They're still not the best SRH missiles, but they are at least usable now. And they won't die with a single chaff, even if you regain lock within half a second, which is a nice change. On top of all of this, the proportional navigation multiplier has been changed on the 530 Supers. Long term short, this will mean that the missile will try to lead less and overcorrect a little bit less. And I will explain this more in depth in the AIM-9L segment a little bit later here, but it's a little bit less pronounced, but it's still there, so I'll mention it regardless. And then on top of all of these changes, all the missile load factors has been changed. They have been removed. So now even if you pull 70 Gs in your plane and your plane somehow doesn't combust, you can still fire the missile. So you don't have to think about, oh, I can only pull 4 Gs, need to fly straight for a little bit so I can fire the missile or next G or whatever. None of that anymore. You can just lock it up, fire the missile, and it will always leave the rails, which is quality of life again, but it also makes it so that you can't really put people in a turn where it's like, haha, you're turning, so you can't lock me or you can't fire the missile on me. Kind of putting you in a good defensive position. Now you can't really do that anymore. And then the last change here for the Heatseekers, you can now fire the Milan missile above Mach 1. But I'd rather not talk about the Milan because it's, it's already giving me goosebumps a little bit. I'd rather not talk about that plane because it's still absolutely horrendous. And then to show you some of the missile changes, I will bring out my inner Picasso. And we are going to be looking at this absolutely fantastic drawing. I will sign this piece at the end of the video and you can put it on eBay. I will sell it for $50 on my Patreon. So, the AIM-9Ls as well as the AIM-9Gs in the previous iteration used to do something like this, very often. You would shoot at a Phantom going sideways and the missile would go in and it would lead a little bit too much and then last second it would try to pull in and it would be too late. Happened pretty often. If this guy made any kind of move, very often the missile would just miss. The AIM-9Ls, however, have been changed in this iteration of the patch. So the AIM-9Gs are the same, I'm just using it as an example. The AIM-9Ls now will lead a little bit less and it will be a little bit closer to the target. So if then the Phantom moves last second, it's a little bit less likely to get out of the way because the missile will be a lot closer. So it has to correct less if the Phantom moves at all, which is a great change, at least on planes like the ASA. Keep in mind that the A-10 Thunderbolt also has these missiles, and if your enemy becomes a little bit slower, if it becomes harder to dodge, because you know, when you're slower, AIM-9Ls are pretty hard to dodge, are less packed, pull pretty hard, and what ends up happening is the missile is going to be a hell of a lot closer. Together with the fact that now you can't really close the gap on the A-10s anymore. Before, the A-10 would have about a 5-second warm-up time for the missile, so you could close the gap a little bit, you could try to get in close, and at close range the AIM-9L isn't really that dangerous. So you could try to get in, and then fly around them, and then go up and do whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Now, if he sees you and he presses that missile key, he will instantly be able to lock you up, instantly in a second. It's going to make it so that he's going to fire this missile from further out, making it harder to dodge, because it's an AIM-9L, and you're in a MiG-15 BIS, for example. And it also is going to be less far away from you. It's going to be harder to dodge altogether. You can fire it from a longer range where the missile is stronger. And it will now overlead a little bit less. Making the AIM-10s pretty damn annoying. It's still going to be perfectly fine. What you want to do is you want to close the gap as much as possible. If he fires it, you want to do two things. You either want to be close enough so it won't be able to pull in, so you can just fly by. And if you see that it starts pulling in, pull into it. Go this way. Missile will have to overcorrect. Slow turn time, at least at the start of the burn stage. And you should be able to get away from the missile pretty handily. But it's going to make it a little bit more annoying. And if you aren't as aware, the A-10 needs a very small window now to shoot at you, making it pretty annoying. Another missile that has been changed is the Magic 2. Now, we're going to pretend now that this is the Mirage. And before, the Magic 2 was 30G. It's 35Gs now. It has more range now, as well as the fact that it accelerates a little bit quicker. So we feel like the drag has been changed because the motor is almost the same. As well as the fact that the fin AOA has been changed, so the control surfaces move a little bit more now. So now the missile does more like, instead of flying straight for a little bit and then pulling in pretty sharply, it will just do this. The missiles feel like SRAMs now. They're pretty deadly, they're really good. Main thing to take away from it, they're more maneuverable and they have a little bit more range. And they're easier to use at closer ranges. And then we have the PL5. They have been changed a little bit ago. I think it's 2 patches. And the PL5s have been changed pretty damn drastically. What the PL5s used to do in the span of a second was they would shoot out and they would barely curve at all. Now the missile will go a little bit slower, but they will be able to turn a lot better. More Gs, less speed, and this is going to make the more turn twice as strong. They're probably some of the best missiles in the game right now. They still have almost the same range as something like the AIM-9G. Still long range, but you won't be able to get those 5 to 6 kilometer tail shots anymore that you would get on occasion with the old PL5s. Now do keep in mind, these missiles are not very flare resistant. So what ends up happening is if someone flares on accident or someone else shoots a missile, the missile will very often go haywire and nothing will really happen. And now to wrap up this video, I'll do what I proved or what I promised. And there you go. That's $50 on my Patreon. Feel free to check it out. And I'll see you all in the next one.